Catherine. I'm going to be a little bit more concise and specific because I want to make sure that this is right. First of all, welcome all of you. It's wonderful to have you here. And this is our KRCB Town Hall debate on Measure J. We appreciate your commitment to engaging in this important topic. A note about the library. Sonoma County Library provides service to all people, regardless of any individual characteristic, including race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ability, age, national or ethnic origin, language, citizenship status, economic status, and political affiliation. We are in the right place for this debate. Let's hear it for the library. Before we get started, I'd like to highlight just a few guidelines to ensure that we have a smooth and respectful event. As you participate, we encourage you to write down your questions on index cards that we gave you, which the moderator will present to our debaters. No oral questions will be allowed during the debate. We ask that everyone remain respectful, refraining from any disruptive language or gestures or eyebrows. No, you can do that. Additionally, please note that no signs or recording devices are permitted. Please turn off your phones. I remembered to do that myself, finally, so that it doesn't vibrate. Just make sure it's off because it's live streamed, and we want to be totally equal and totally clean. By attending, you are consenting to being photographed and recorded for our live stream. Let's work together to create a safe and engaging space for civil discourse. And a note about fact-checking. The KRCB newsroom will be producing a special 1-hour broadcast of this debate, and in that process, in developing that piece, our journalists will provide context and fact-checking as needed in the coming news stories. You can find all of your local and election news at krcb.org. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gina Baleria, Associate Professor of Journalism, Digital Media, and Radio and Podcasting at Sonoma State University, and author of several books on journalism and news. Prior to teaching, Gina worked as an award-winning journalist and author. Please welcome Gina.
Thank you so much, everybody. I am thrilled to be here today moderating this debate. I know this is an issue that has a lot of interest on both sides, and I think the goal tonight is to just try to help people understand, try to inform everybody out there who really is trying to navigate this. So I'm really excited to be talking with all four of you and going there. So that's my goal for tonight, and I can't wait to talk with everybody. So thank you. The first thing I want to do, and I'm just going to open up my computer here and get myself all ready to go. And thank you also to the audience for your questions. I've got them here. I've tried to do a somewhat of an organization. I'll do my best to get to as much as I can in the limited time that we do have. So this is a question for both, and I am going to start here with the Yes on J team, as this you're the team that brought this forward, but this is for both. I'm going to come to the No on J team in a moment. To define CAFOs and family farms and these terms that we have. So how do you define a CAFO? And even how might we define a family farm? I don't know if there's an official definition or not. And do you believe the current definitions are accurate in representing the farming practices of Sonoma County? And I would add also a large CAFO and a medium CAFO. That might be helpful for people to understand. So I'll start over here.
So concentrated animal feeding operation is a definition developed by the EPA to define a facility based on the amount of waste that they produce. So it's basically based on the amount of risk of pollution of a facility, but CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operation, is used almost universally as an interchangeable term with factory farm. You can see environmental, animal welfare, small farm, public health advocacy groups all use the term fairly interchangeably because it's a government definition that meets that term fairly well. So by prohibiting CAFOs, Measure J would essentially set a limit on the number of animals that can be confined inside a commercial farm. And those limits are very high. So for large CAFOs, that's 700 mature dairy cows, which is more than twice the countywide or nationwide average size of a dairy. 85,000 egg-laying hens to be a large CAFO, or 125,000 meat chickens would make them a large CAFO. And hearing those numbers, people might be confused because they might be wondering, why is anyone talking about Measure J possibly impacting small farms? And the reason for that is that the opposition has essentially focused almost exclusively on medium CAFOs. And medium CAFOs have a lower number threshold for animals, but it's not just the number threshold for medium CAFOs. And the EPA and local water regulators have been quite clear on this. There are no medium CAFOs in Sonoma County because they're not allowed to discharge waste in the way that they would be required to be classified a medium CAFO. So that leaves 21 large concentrated animal feeding operations in Sonoma County. Places like egg farms with over 500,000 birds. And I think my time is up now, so thanks.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. And I was remiss in not introducing our panel, so forgive me. I want to introduce the Yes on J team. Christina Garfinkel, Santa Rosa resident and lead organizer with the Coalition to End Factory Farming, focused on coalition building and research. And Louis Bernier, Petaluma resident and factory farm investigator, whose findings have been published in national outlets, including the New York Times. And on the No on J's, we've got Brent Newell, environmental justice lawyer who advocates for air and water quality, particularly against large dairy facility expansions in California's San Joaquin Valley. And Mike Weber, co-owner of Sunrise Farms, a poultry and egg farm in Petaluma. So forgive me, now you know who's speaking to you. And I'm going to come over to the No on J side if I could ask you to answer the same question, defining a CAFO, defining a factory farm, and do you believe the current definitions are accurate in representing the farming practices in Sonoma County?
Just a point of clarification, Gina, are we going to return to opening statements and after this question?
I think we were using this question as an opening statement, but we can do that. Let's answer this, and then, yes, I'll give you an opportunity if you had something prepared.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Brent Newell, and I've spent almost 25 years of my career representing impacted communities in the San Joaquin Valley who are overburdened by the air and water pollution from very large confined animal facilities. And the thing with the CAFO definition is that it really is not synonymous with the term factory farm. The Yes on J narrative fundamentally disconnects from how Measure J actually works, because Measure J applies based on those CAFO definitions, which are water permit requirements. We are not in Duplin County, North Carolina. We're not in Sac County, Iowa, and we are not in Tulare County, California. The Yes on J proponents don't know, don't understand, or don't care that there is a fundamental difference between what's happening in those counties and what Sonoma County is. Sonoma County dairies are pasture-based, organic, small farms. They stand in stark contrast to the factory farms that are in Duplin County, Sac County, and Tulare County. Measure J bans farms that are defined as large CAFOs, for example, over 700 cows. They also ban medium CAFOs. But here's the thing. They say medium CAFOs are not allowed to discharge, so there aren't any. That's not what Measure J says. There are two fact-specific inquiries that go into whether there's a medium CAFO, and the measure provides a right to sue. And you can bet that Direct Action Everywhere is going to use that right of action to sue medium CAFOs, establish that they are CAFOs, and seek to have them banned.
Thank you so much. And to your point, if each side has an opening statement to make, I'll come back to this side, and if you'd like to go ahead and make a short opening statement.
Sorry, just to clarify, do we also get rebuttal on this?
Yeah, should we do a rebuttal first? Forgive me. Yeah, okay, so why don't we rebut, and then go ahead, and then we'll make your opening statement.
So I think the medium CAFO definition is the crux of the issue, so I want to get to that. And the fact-specific inquiry, I think, is important, but I think it's important that people know what those facts actually are. And for determining whether a facility in the medium size range is a medium CAFO, that fact-based inquiry is whether they use a man-made ditch or pipe to transfer waste, process waste or manure into surface water. That is something that we should not allow in Sonoma County. I think we can all agree that that's not something we would like. And I think we can hear from farmers in Sonoma County that they are not allowed to do that, that they cannot transfer waste in a ditch or pipe into surface water. So I would be very interested to hear if the other side has any examples of farms that are currently transferring manure directly into surface water. Because frankly, you could already sue under the Clean Water Act, and there have been successful lawsuits for that.
Okay. Thank you so much. And is there any additional statement you'd like to make by way of introduction?
Yeah, we had opening statements.
Okay, great. Go for it.
All right, so Measure J is a moderate measure that simply sets a limit on the number of animals that can be confined in commercial farms. And it does so by prohibiting what the EPA defines as concentrated animal feeding operations, also known as CAFOs, which you're going to hear a lot tonight, or more commonly to us as factory farms. And Sonoma County does have thousands of small farms, something the county is known for. But over the last few decades, large companies have been coming in, they've been consolidating, and they've been taking over the market. And they've done so at the cost of small farms, of animal welfare, of the environment, and the health of the residents. If Measure J were to pass, it would just ask that these 21, like Lewis mentioned, massive, most destructive facilities downsize to a reasonable limit. And it would also prevent any new factory farms or medium CAFOs or large CAFOs from entering the county. The CAFOs in Sonoma County have been exposed for rampant animal cruelty, including birds that have been left sick and injured to just starve to death. They've also polluted our local water sources with key waterways like the Petaluma River, Laguna de Santa Rosa, being impaired with nitrates and phosphates, which are key indicators of CAFO waste pollution. They pose a huge risk to public health with dangerous levels of bacteria such as salmonella being found in many of these places, and the highly contagious avian flu just spreading across these operations. And CAFOs also are a risk to small farms because they outcompete them by cutting costs on labor, animal welfare, and environmental protections. And the opposition has, who want to keep factory farming in our county, have created a lot of confusion with misinformation to try to scare voters and confuse voters. But the undeniable reality is that factory farming is hurting all of us, and it's time that we eliminate them from our food system. So we are here as the Yes on J campaign tonight to represent the facts of this measure and to elucidate the truth about CAFOs in Sonoma County.
Thank you very much. And now your opening statement, please. Okay. Of course. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Weber. I'm a fourth-generation poultry farmer based in Petaluma with my brother. We have a chicken ranch that our family's had for 112 years. We produce eggs that are consumed throughout Northern California. We also produce organic fertilizer that goes throughout Northern California to help grow organic food that we as a community here in Sonoma County and other communities get to eat. I'm here to oppose what has been put on this ballot. It is absolutely misleading. This ballot measure has nothing to do with animal welfare. It doesn't enhance any standards. It doesn't change any standards. It doesn't offer any new standards. It doesn't provide any environmental protections for our land, for our air, or for our water. It doesn't change any of the standards in any way. Zero. It looks at farms based on their size and says without merit that those farms are bad. I do operate an operation that has over 500,000 chickens. On our chicken ranch, we were the first in the state to put in manure drying systems that dry that manure, take the moisture out, so there's no environment for flies, there's no off-gassing of any emissions of methane or anything else, and we then compress that down into a fertilizer pellet. We were the first to put in a pellet mill to make it into a fertilizer pellet so that organic farms across the state could grow their food with this organic fertilizer. Without organic fertilizer, you don't have organic food. This measure will go to put us out of business. We won't have milk, eggs, and other fresh produce from this community. We won't have what's needed to grow our food as well. We'll be left with nothing. But a $500 million loss to our economy, according to the University of California and their analysis, hundreds to thousands of jobs, and roughly $1,000 of economic hit per man, woman, and child in this community. And then on top of that, food inflation. doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm now going to ask each side a specific question related to information that we've been talking about, and you'll have your time to respond and then time to rebut and vice versa. So for the Yes on J team, I want to talk about environmental aspect of this. Can you elaborate on the environmental impacts of CAFOs, how you expect Measure J to contribute to a healthier ecosystem in Sonoma County, and also some questions from the audience that how this addresses climate change concerns and also environmental regulations that are in place now and how things might change with the passage of this measure. And feel free to respond.
Thanks. So it's probably not surprising to people to hear that CAFOs do create an immense amount of pollution and are bad for the environment. CAFOs create a huge amount of waste. A single dairy CAFO with 700 mature dairy cows produces more waste than the entire human population of Petaluma. It's really hard to comprehend exactly how much waste is coming from these animals. And then that waste is largely stored in open pits, manure lagoons. For example, those at Merton's Dairy in Sonoma are twice the size of a football field. That waste, that manure, along with the enteric fermentation that happens in the digestive system of cows, creates a huge amount of emissions. The Regional Climate Protection Authority has found that animal agriculture is the third leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions in Sonoma County specifically. We also know that that waste seeps into our water and pollutes surface water. So in Sonoma County, all of the 6 dairy CAFOs that are at issue here are adjacent to waterways that are polluted and are marked or stated as impaired by the EPA due to nitrogen, phosphates, or bacteria, all which are major indicators of CAFO pollution and all that are heavily associated with that. There's a lot we could dive into specifically. Water use is huge among CAFOs, but specifically eliminating these facilities and having them downsize would have an impact on all of those issues. We know that the more waste is being confined in manure lagoons, the larger those lagoons are, the more emissions are coming as a result of that, and also the higher the risk to groundwater and surface water is. So having these facilities downsized would have an impact on that, and that would help our environment in Sonoma County.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to give you your time to respond. Also, there are audience members with regard to this issue that are curious about environmental stewardship by farmers in the community and how, you gave one example, but how you're addressing climate change concerns. And also, because there have been successful lawsuits in this area with regard to the Clean Water Act, addressing that. I know that's kind of a lot for your rebuttal time. And then finally, wouldn't compost be also appropriate for a fertilizer? I know it's a lot to respond to, but go ahead and you can rebut. Yeah.
Do a rebuttal and then.
Yeah, do your rebuttal and then we can explore some of
dive
these.
into that because that's a meaty topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what, a minute for rebuttal to
Yes,
what
please.
they just said, and then
Yes,
we'll
please.
answer
Yeah.
your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So Louis just talked about water pollution and climate pollution. And let's be clear about something. There are existing water pollution control laws that apply. And let's also be clear that those laws should be enforced. If there's a bad actor, that bad actor should get a speeding ticket. That bad actor should not have the car taken away. They should not be shut down because they may exceed some permitting threshold, not even considering that they may be discharging. So let's be clear about something. This measure is extreme and it bans farms. It doesn't penalize water pollution. We have laws for that. Second thing, climate pollution. The farms that would be banned by this measure are pasture-based organic dairy farms. And those are the best, most climate-friendly forms of dairy production there is. The manure that's deposited on the pasture does not emit methane. The cows grazing sequester carbon in the soil.
Thank you so much. And then just as a quick follow-up to that, this is from the audience, given that some Sonoma County CAFOs have been successfully sued for violating the Clean Water Act. How do the CAFOs respond to address climate change concerns and address these issues?
I'll do this. Okay,
Yeah, thanks.
So just because 2 farms have been sued under the Clean Water Act, that does not mean that every single farm that meets the definition of CAFO is also polluting. Facts are stubborn things, John Adams said. And there are no facts that they are putting forward that establish that all CAFOs in Sonoma County are bad. As I was saying earlier, pasture-based organic dairy farms benefit the climate. Compared to the kinds of dairies that my clients have been affected by in the San Joaquin Valley, 10,000 cows, 14,000 cows. Kathy Tresch's dairy is about 1,000 cows, and it's the largest one that would be banned. Her farm is an organic pasture-based farm. That is the model of dairy production that we should encourage and support. Mike Wagner's farm, if you ban his farm, it doesn't do anything for the climate. Chickens are not ruminant animals. They do not eructate methane. His manure is managed in an aerobic state. It does not emit methane. In fact, he uses solar power to dry the manure, put it into pellets, and that is used as fertilizer instead of fossil fuel-based fertilizer. The farms in Sonoma County are climate-friendly, sustainable, pasture-based, and local. We should be encouraging these farms because they're an important part of our community, our local food system, and our economy. My neighbor, Mariano, works at the Clover Creamery. If we start shutting down farms, I don't want my neighbors, other people in my community to lose their jobs. I don't want our community, Petaluma, to suffer from the economic effects of this ill-informed ballot measure.
And I'll give you a minute to respond.
Thanks. There's a lot to respond to there, but I'll start with the idea that there are existing laws that should just be enforced, and I think this is at the crux of this issue. With animal welfare, with the environment, with public health, we are operating in a system where we think that we can have unlimited sized farms. And then if an animal is mistreated, and then when there is discharge, then we can come in and regulate it afterwards. But what we're saying is, there has to be a limit. These facilities cannot operate sustainably at any size. At the maximum possible sizes. The idea that Kathy Tresch's farm is the largest that would be shut down, not sure where that comes from, but it's definitely not accurate according to our research. There is a dairy farm with 1,500 cows according to water board data, and that's just mature dairy cows. Also, like a lot of these benefits of pasture-based dairy, they may be benefits in comparison to non-pasture-based, but that doesn't mean that you can have an unlimited amount of cows. And not every dairy in Sonoma County, or every CAFO, is pasture-based.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I want to move on to a question for the No on J team about economic viability and market impact. It's come up a lot already, but to ask the specific question, how do you think Measure J could threaten the economic stability of family farms in Sonoma County? How could it affect the local food supply and prices? What could be the potential economic fallout for farms and customers and businesses who are part of that web?
Well, it's pretty clear that the measure is designed to ban farming in Sonoma County, period. It starts with the large farms. You take out the large farms, you lose your large creameries. There are 2 of them, Albert Strauss and Clover Sonoma. When those 2 go, the small farms have no place to sell their milk. You also, by losing the large farms, you lose the 2 big mills for feed in our community. And when those 2 mills go, the small farms of any size lose their access to feed. So they, again, can't get the food they need for their animals, and they can't sell the product they're producing. There's 2 egg farms in our community. Petaluma Egg Farms, the first organic egg farm west of the Mississippi, and Weber Family Farm, Sunrise Farms. When we go, the feed mills go because there's no throughput, and there's no longer any fresh eggs to feed our community. In our community, there's a chicken producing an egg for every citizen in this county. We eat about enough eggs each year to have one chicken producing for us. So if you start eliminating the chickens, there's no eggs they're producing for you. So now we're importing them from outside of the state, where roughly 70% of the eggs come from already. It's not local, it's not fresh, and we're denying our opportunity to have a fresh, healthy food system for decades to come. For that reason, economically, it doesn't make sense. And then I'll repeat what the University of California said, that this is going to be a $500 million impact to our local economy, to Sonoma County. It also means that other counties, the neighboring counties, don't get food because 50% of the organic milk produced in the state comes from here. So all of that goes away. And then the jobs.
Thank you so much. And I just want to ask a quick follow-up before we get to the rebuttal. And this is something that I think a lot of voters in the county are grappling with, is this idea of large versus small family farms, and that farms seem to have gotten larger over the years. So one audience member asked, shouldn't we be fighting against these ever larger farms and reverse the trend so that family farms are small? And so I'm asking this question from the audience and asking for your response. 30 seconds if you can.
Well, if you want to do it. You got it. Okay. So we're a family farm. My family is my brother and myself. We're not a large corporation. The Marts, the other Petaluma egg farm, they're a family. It's 3 brothers and their father running a farm. If that's now illegal because it's a big faceless corporation, we got a problem. If you look at the dairies, there's roughly 50 different families in our community producing milk here. They're families, they're not corporations. And the big one that Lewis cited, it's actually 3 members of a family that together have about 1,500 cows. So they would fall under the thresholds and not being the biggest. Size doesn't matter. This has got to be about merit. If you're doing something wrong, if you're breaking the rules, then you need the punishment. Otherwise, it's on merit, and this has nothing to do with merit.
Thank you. And a response, please.
Yeah, so first I want to address the UCCE report that Weber cited, and I really encourage everyone listening and watching, please go read that report. It has nothing to do with Measure J. The report is a cute little thought experiment that looks at eliminating all animal agriculture in the county. In the report, they admit they could not identify how many CAFOs are in the county because it's something that's hidden and hard to find. And so they just wrote a report on eliminating all animal agriculture, which of course you're gonna have downstream consequences from that. Please, everyone go read that report, it's not valid. As far as economic consequences, we've talked to economists, it's negligible. You would maybe see a dip in sales tax revenue or sales tax, but property tax values would go up because property taxes around CAFOs. Did you waive the?
Oh, sorry, did you go? Okay. Oh, no, for a minute. I thought it was a minute.
Sorry, is this the rebuttal or the answer?
This is the rebuttal, yeah.
Gotcha. I was like, that was so fast.
30 seconds. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so you also brought up food scarcity, and I want to highlight that actually all CAFOs partner with commercial retailers such as Costco, Trader Joe's, Safeway, and a huge amount of the product is exported. So CAFOs have not solved the food scarcity problem. The number of hungry Americans continues. Okay.
And can I ask everybody in the room to focus up here and listen? I know that there's a lot of agreements and disagreements with depending on the side. Let's try to keep the focus up here so that we can talk amongst the people at the panels. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I want to now turn to the animal welfare question, which has come up a lot in conversations about Measure J. And so I have 2 questions on this issue. I'm going to start with the yes on J side, and I want to talk about how does Measure J specifically enhance animal welfare compared to current farming practices of CAFOs? And can you provide examples of how this measure would lead to better conditions for farm animals?
Thanks, yes. So I come to Measure J and this campaign from a background of being a factory farm investigator. I have been investigating dozens of factory farms across the country since 2017, and some of my investigations into the largest and most well-known factory farms in the country have been covered in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Vox, Vice News, Wired Magazine, and other prominent outlets. So I'm well aware of animal welfare issues, but you don't actually have to be a factory farm investigator to understand that the more animals you confine in a farm, the worse the conditions are going to be. And there's a reason that in Sonoma County, we're proud of our small farms. We're not proud that we have just special because they're in Sonoma County farms. Sonoma County farms are literally smaller than the rest of the country in a lot of ways on average, but there are some that are very large. And I think everyone can understand that when you confine hundreds of thousands of animals in an industrial shed, there are animal welfare issues with that. And CAFO operators, factory farm operators, want us to believe that there is no limit to the number of animals you can confine in a single facility, and the animal welfare conditions will be totally fine. But these are the same people that told us when Prop 12 and Prop 2 came along that chickens are happier in cages. Sunrise Farms was one of the biggest opponents to Prop 2, which was a ballot measure statewide in California that would have eliminated cages in egg farms. They told us that egg-laying hens were happier in cages. They want to confine as many animals as they can because it makes more money. It's the profit incentives. And that's not something wrong about anyone specific, it's just what the market pushes you towards. There's no choice. When your neighbor is confining twice the number of birds as you and there's no limit.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I do have a quick follow-up for this side before I get to your rebuttal, and it is that there has been discussion that if CAFOs are closed, that even larger CAFOs would start to serve this area. And I'm wondering if in 30 seconds, give me a quick response to that.
Yeah, I think the most important initial response is I don't believe it's true that there's only one egg-laying hen in the county per citizen. There are, I think, of around 1 million egg-laying hens in the county, and that's twice the number of people. So there's a large amount of room to take out of what's being shipped out of the county already. He already said 70% of eggs are already coming out of the county. And then there's a reason that the biggest factory farm groups across the country are coming out against Measure J. It's because this would impact them.
Thank you so much. Response, please. 1 minute.
I'm not sure what to cover here other than malarkey. Just absolute malarkey. You got to say it. It's just taxing. So yeah, because of the size of a farm, therefore it's bad. That's the crux of your argument. It has nothing to do with merit. It has nothing to do with how many animal welfare audits we go through, whether it's an independent grocer, whether it's an animal welfare organization, whether it's the state or federal authorities coming through and inspecting everything. Merit is how we make decisions in America, not on size. We don't discriminate that way. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time. And then my question for the no on JA side is with regard to animal welfare. How do you justify current factory farming practices in terms of animal welfare? What measures do farms like Weber Family Farms implement to ensure humane treatment of animals? And this is and also some questions from the audience related to that are concerned about sort of animal cruelty and instances of animal cruelty that have happened at some of the farms here in the county.
Well, there's been allegations made by the proponents. Even today, they put out misleading information about animals in this county. Again, the facts are different. First off, California has the most stringent animal welfare standards in the country. They put forward what's called California Prop 12. Every one of the farms in California producing eggs has to be cage-free. It had to go in by 2020. We were well ahead of the game. That's an environment that's more suitable for the environment for the birds to exhibit all their natural behaviors. They're out on the ground, they're in an aviary environment. They are inside where they're protected from pathogens and other things. But the system is designed by animal welfare specialists to make sure that they've got the highest level of care. We're audited by that. We're inspected by that every year. Our supermarkets require it. We can't actually market our product unless we pass those audits. The state and federal government comes out and audits us. FDA was out last year. CDFA will be on our farm next week. Our animal welfare certifier will be on our farm in early October. They review everything. They look at all the chickens. They look in every chicken house. They look at all our daily records, our employee training, our standard operating procedures. If they find a nonconformance, we can't sell our product. So this constant buzz about they're mistreating animals, there's widespread cannibalism, there's animals pecking each other's eyes out. It's false, misleading, fake information.
Thank you, I appreciate it. 1 minute for rebuttal.
So we heard right here the same thing that we hear across the board with this situation. People that fought tooth and nail against a reform like Prop 12 are now coming out and saying that it's the strongest protection in the country and therefore we don't need anything else. Even though Prop 12 only gave 1 square foot of space per egg-laying hens and gave almost no protections to many other animals. We also heard about auditing by third-party companies, but as we heard right here, they know when the auditors are coming. We heard exact, not dates, but they know when the auditors are coming, and they can prepare for it properly. When activists and investigators and employee whistleblowers expose conditions about what's going on in these facilities, the footage is very different. And that's because it's not in anybody's best interest to let you know the reality of how animals are being treated, and it is in the best interest financially of these facilities to confine animals as much as possible.
Thank you so much, appreciate that. Okay, so I would like to ask a question now on public health, which is another topic that has come up a lot in conversations around this measure. So I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to start with the yes on J side, and then I think I'm going to ask for a rebuttal and then maybe a response and a rebuttal if we have time. So let's start with yes on J, and then I have a follow-up, a different question after that. So what specific public health risks do you associate with concentrated animal feeding operations, and how does Measure J address those concerns? And I'm so sorry, and also what types of small farm models do you envision replacing large CAFOs, and how do you believe these models will sustain the agricultural economy?
Okay. So again, this is pretty intuitive stuff, pretty basic stuff. The more animals you confine in a commercial farm, the higher the risk of disease transmission. There are other factors, of course, involved, but when you cram a bunch of animals into a farm around, for example, 500,000 animals, there is a serious risk of disease spreading. And this is what we see across the world. These massive confined facilities are spreading disease. New diseases are constantly emerging. They're overusing antibiotics. There are other issues that come with that. And we saw recently in Sonoma County the highly pathogenic avian influenza that infected over 1 million birds, and it jumped CAFO to CAFO to CAFO across the county. And when HPAI, when avian flu hits a CAFO compared to a small farm, that's 500,000 egg-laying hens that are immediately euthanized instead of a smaller number for a smaller farm. We also see examples of this with Purdue and their Petaluma poultry brand. The Purdue slaughterhouse in Petaluma has 4 times the national rate of Campylobacter and more than 4 times the statewide rate of Salmonella. And that has been sustained over a very long period of time. People can check that out. There's a fantastic Press Democrat write-up about that issue. And they can also go, if they want to see more facts about this, they can go to yesonj.vote. And there's a lot of information about these specifics. But yeah, I mean, essentially, less animals confined in commercial farms, it's pretty intuitive. It should help with that public health risk. And now we see that avian flu jumping to dairy herds, hundreds of dairy herds across the state, including 8 dairy herds in California now. I believe it's 10 as of this morning. And also jumping to humans. 14 humans in the last year in the US have been infected, and it has a 50% mortality rate. So we need to get this under control. 52% mortality rate over the course of avian flu.
Thank you. Response, please.
Yeah. First, Lewis would have you believe that factory farms impact communities and the public health. But that is a general statement without any relation to what's happening in Sonoma County. We're not Duplin County, North Carolina. We're not Sac County, Iowa. We're not Tulare County, California. We're Sonoma County, and the farms here are fundamentally different, fundamentally sustainable, small, organic, pasture-based dairy farms. We're not in the same ballpark, we're not in the same league, we're not in the same sport that what Lewis is talking about.
Thank you so much. And my question for you with regard to public health, it actually did have to do with avian flu, but in general.
He's got a response to avian flu.
Great. So because that was my question was, what is being done at the farms in Sonoma County, at the larger farms in particular, where animals might be a little bit more close together to deal with pathogens or things like avian flu or other elements like this?
Right, so avian flu came to Sonoma County a couple years ago and affected a couple backyard flocks, wiped out all the birds. In November of last year, members of the proponents team actually broke into a duck farm in Sonoma County. And days later, that was the first commercial farm in our county to ever go positive with high-path AI. Now, it could have been their carelessness of breaking in for one of Lewis's investigations. It could have been a complete coincidence. That farm, with roughly 250,000 ducks that had been in business for over 100 years, lost all of their animals, put enough virus in the air that it then cascaded and hit other poultry farms like a wildfire. And there were about 10 different poultry ranches that lost all of their animals as a result of it. What are we doing now? Well, we've increased our biosecurity to the highest levels, and we're putting up cameras. We're putting up all sorts of security measures to keep people out of our houses who shouldn't be in there, that are doing their investigations, that are in there for malicious reasons.
Oh, you have to, if you have it, okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. So the next question I want, oh yes, I'm so sorry. 1 minute rebuttal. Thank you for reminding me.
So,
Oh no, I asked you a separate question. Did you want more time? Because you didn't use all your time.
Yeah, so
I'm so sorry, let them use all their time and then we'll
Okay,
get
there are
your
a couple other health measures that I'd like to address as well. So it was mentioned before about salmonella. And again, this is one of those opportunities to create fear in the public's eyes about salmonella. So you understand from a chicken perspective, when we receive the day-old chick, we are required by the federal government to test that chick for the presence of salmonella. Before we move it into a production house, we're required again to test it, and we're also required to test the production house for the presence of salmonella. Midway through the life of the bird, we're also required to test for salmonella. If at any point we see salmonella, we are not able to take those eggs and put them into the channel of trade. We have to do a full recall. So in my time on the farm, there's never been a situation where there's been the presence of salmonella in any of our ranches, at any of our birds, at any of our farms. I don't know of the marts ever having a problem at Petaluma egg farms as well. So to just carelessly say that we're putting salmonella out there into the environment could not be further from the truth. If you want to know sources of salmonella, we find it in animals such as cats, dogs, humans, and rodents, but not in our chickens. Thank you.
Response, 1 minute.
again, Press Democrat has a fantastic write-up of this, but it's very clear. The Purdue Slaughterhouse in Petaluma has 4 times the statewide rate of salmonella, and that's the rate already. So there's already salmonella generally, and it's 4 times that. It's just a clear fact. As far as allegations trying to shift blame for the spread of disease in factory farms, I think it's ridiculous to try to blame activists and investigators that are trying to document cruelty. And I think it's also really important for people to look at the cruelty that has been documented and at the reasons that investigations happen. Because owners of factory farms, these massive companies, Purdue, will never let you see the reality of what's happening inside their farms. These are massive sheds, hundreds of thousands of animals, and they will never let you see what's going on. And it is our only option to investigate, whether it's through an undercover employment-based investigation or something else. That's the only way we can find out how these animals are being treated.
Thank you. So we are going to get to a final question and then closing statements in a minute, but a question came up that I would like to ask, and I would like to give each side 1 minute to respond to this question. And it has to do with wildfire risk and grazing. And so I want to start with the No on J team and talk a little bit about your take on grazing and wildfire risk, and then I'm going to turn to the Yes on J team as well.
Well, grazing not only mitigates wildfire risk. We've all seen the herds of goats, grazing in public parks, for example. course, cattle, grazing has the same effect. But that mitigates an impact from climate change. Grazing on healthy grasslands has also a benefit of taking CO2 out of our atmosphere and putting it in the soil. It's a climate mitigation measure as well as preventing wildfire risk. So we take, with dairy farms grazing their cows out on the pasture, unlike the farms that are in the San Joaquin Valley, we are sequestering carbon in the soil in Sonoma County. That's an essential part of our climate strategy as a county, and it helps make dairy farms such an important climate strategy to produce healthy food and benefit our climate at the same time.
So Measure J does not ban grazing operations, so you can still have those operations. And dairy facilities tend to just graze in their one area, their one pasture. So grazing operations are actually much better for sending them to areas that are actually prone to wildfire, like mountainous areas. Also, carbon sequestration, while you might get carbon back in the ground, doesn't address methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas pollutant. And I think we need to figure out why are all these wildfires happening. It's because of climate change. And when it comes to climate change contributions, methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas.
Do we have time? Okay.
One example specifically on the carbon sequestration, Tresh says on their website that they are planning to start sequestering 100 tons of carbon every year. On the Strauss website, I apologize. On your section of the Strauss website, it says that they have a plan to start sequestering 100 tons of carbon a year. A reasonable estimate says they are emitting more than 80 times that amount.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so my final question before we get to closing statements has to do with community trust. This is an issue that has very strong feelings on both sides, and what my goal here is to remember that, through this all, that we are neighbors, we are a community that is together. So, but there has been a lot of tension and a lot of, as we know. So for both sides, and I should have done a coin flip to see to start with. And why don't I start with this side here? You want me to start over there? All right, I'm going to start over here. Okay. Given the history of tension between farmers and animal rights activists, how do you propose to rebuild trust within the community while addressing these differing viewpoints and calming fears and helping people just navigate and try to understand this issue? So how do you propose to rebuild trust while having different viewpoints?
Yeah, well, I want to clarify that Measure J is not animal rights versus farmers. The Coalition to End Factory Farming is made up of over 40 organizations, all with different reasons for wanting to eliminate factory farms, including the environment, including public health, including animal welfare, and including protecting small farms. There are members of our coalition who understand that CAFOs outcompete with small farms and do care about them as well. And since the beginning, when we started Measure J, we did want to work with the small farmers. And we reached out to CAF, and we reached out to Sierra Club, and we reached out to the Sonoma County Democrats for feedback because we wanted this to be a collaborative thing, but we were ghosted, and we never heard anything. And our air is currently polluted, our water is polluted, animals are currently suffering, and so we had to take action now. So moving forward, I would hope that we can, of course, continue to have respectful conversations, but I don't believe in Band-Aid fixes to a systemic problem that is based on a food system of factory farming. Synthetic liners, biodigesters, these random Prop 2, Prop 12, they're failing us, and we have to actually get to the root of the system. So I think when the opposition is ready to lead with facts and stop with this misinformation, we can have a real dialogue and continue to try to eliminate factory farming from our system.
Thank you. And then I'm going to ask the same question, given the history of tension between farmers and, I said animal rights activists, and you have clarified that it's not quite that. But how do you propose to rebuild trust within the community while addressing these differing viewpoints?
Well, Measure J is a bull in the china shop. It's a sledgehammer solution for a problem that doesn't exist in this county. This is how we rebuild trust. First, we defeat Measure J. Then, we convene a roundtable of experts, all parties at the table, and we identify areas where there are actual issues. We work together to develop reasonable solutions, but most importantly, we need to develop policy that helps our farmers thrive, that ensures our wonderful local food system is resilient and benefits our communities for decades to come. That this food system preserves our open space and, yes, enhances animal welfare. A good example of this is an ordinance adopted in Sonoma County, where groups did just that. They came together. I was there. I represented the Sierra Club. The Sonoma County Board of Supervisors adopted an ordinance that benefited groundwater quality, and it exempted from that ordinance pasture-based farms because they knew that pasture-based farms were much better for groundwater quality than the fully confined dairy facilities that they were trying to address. So let's identify solutions, let's support farmers, and I just want to say that Mike and I, we are proud to stand in opposition to Measure J with the Sonoma County Democratic Party, the Sonoma County Republican Party, the North Bay Labor Council, the Teamsters, Sonoma County Conservation Action, Russian Riverkeeper, the California Climate and Agricultural Network, the Sonoma County Farm Bureau, Community Alliance of Family Farmers, and many other allies.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you, all four of you, both teams for answering our questions today. And now it is time for closing statements. And we'll start with Yes on J.
Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you. So to kind of recap this, Measure J is a simple measure, and I think it's something that the vast majority of people agree with. Factory farming, these massive facilities, are not good for animals. They're not good for the environment. They're not good for public health. It's a simple and it's a concrete measure that would prohibit those kind of facilities, and that is not an uncontroversial thing. Of course, there are a lot of interests that rely on those factory farms now, and it's not going to be an easy thing to snap our fingers and make them go away, of course. But I think Sonoma County is the perfect place for Measure J because there actually are small farms here. There actually are a lot of people that care overwhelmingly about the environment, about our public health, and about our small farms, and are proud of that. And over the past couple decades, that is starting to change. Dairy farms have been closing at extremely high rates, and that's not because of Measure J, that's because massive factory farms around the country are outcompeting them. And there's a reason that across the country, the biggest agribusiness groups in the country, for example, the National Pork Producers Council, donated almost $50,000 to the No on Measure J campaign. It's because they have said publicly, they think that if this passed here, it could spread to other places where we're all in agreement that it's a bigger problem in other places. But this is a place where it's more simple and more feasible to actually start. We can't start where it's worst, where they have the most power, where they have the most influence, and where there's no small farms to transition to. And I would just encourage everyone finally to go to yesonj.vote. You can see a map of the 21 factory farms, the 21 CAFOs there. You can see the list of them. You can see real pictures of factory farms in Sonoma County. And I would also encourage you to go to the No on J website as well and learn about their site as well. I really think debates are important, but I also think when you go there, look for the text of the measure at issue. You will not find it. Look for the number thresholds for CAFOs. You will not find those. Look at the pictures. A lot of them are stock photos. They have a picture of cows in a field of lavender in South Africa. This is not a campaign based on the facts of the measure, and I think it's important for people to understand the facts.
Thank you so much. And your closing statement?
As I mentioned, I'm an environmental justice attorney with 25 years of experience. And I want to be clear, I do not represent any party on this issue. I'm not getting paid. I'm here in my personal capacity as a member of this community. Measure J is a disaster for our community, our farmers, and our county. Farmers like Mike Wagner and his brother have invested massive sums of money in their farm to comply with Proposition 12, which was passed in 2018. It's not fair now in this measure to tell them to shut down. Kathy Tresh is in the audience. She's been with her family farming as a dairy farmer. It is not fair to shut her down when she is doing the best form of dairy production in the state. Measure J is as extreme as direct action everywhere. I think who is not supporting yes on J is a very important issue for people to know. Reputable animal welfare, animal rights groups are not supporting Measure J, like People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, like the Humane Society of the United States, like SPCA, like the Sonoma County-based Animal Legal Defense Fund. Those groups are not on record supporting Measure J. Why? Because Measure J is an extreme solution for a problem that does not exist in Sonoma County. Please join me and Mike and vote no on Measure J.
Thank you. I want to thank all four of the panelists today. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Christina Garfunkel, Santa Rosa resident, lead organizer with the Coalition to End Factory Farming, focused on coalition building and research. Louis Bernier, Petaluma resident and factory farm investigator, whose findings have been published in national outlets, including the New York Times, for yes on J. And for no on J, Brent Newell, environmental justice lawyer who advocates air and water quality, particularly against large dairy facility expansions in California's San Joaquin Valley. Mike Weber, co-owner of Sunrise Farms and a poultry and egg farm in Petaluma. Thank you to the audiences here and online, and I'm going to hand it back to Clark.
All right, well, thank you for your thoughtful participation. Again, if you didn't get your question answered, we are going to be addressing this over time. Don't stop sending your information into KRCB. We're going to be fact-checking. We're going to be doing stories about this, and we're going to be supporting the discussion in our community. A special thanks to the library, to the volunteers who helped make this sort of event possible, to the many supporters of Northern California Public Media, to our listeners, viewers, and all who came to participate. Let's hear it for yourselves. And while we do wish you a wonderful evening, we want to let you know that on one last note, that we need to get out of this room pretty quickly. We have to give it back and clean it up and return it the way it was. So if you'd like to continue your conversation, which I know you're going to want to do because you're all family and friends and community members, please do it in the very pleasant, temperate weather outside. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.